The ion storm hit Ashvale like a living thing, all fury and electric teeth. Darren Moss watched through the reinforced viewport of his habitat as violet lightning tore across the moon's methane sky, each bolt close enough to make the walls hum. He'd been through a dozen storms in his 5 years here, but this one felt different, angrier somehow, as if the universe itself had taken offense. He returned to his workstation, fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed star charts older than human spaceflight. This was his life now, cataloging the astronomical records of dead civilizations in peaceful isolation. Far from the complications that had driven him to the edge of known space, no colleagues, no obligations, no one to disappoint. The impact knocked him from his chair. Alarms shrieked as his systems registered a crash site 200 meters northeast. Darren's heart hammered against his ribs. Nothing should be flying in this storm, nothing could be. He pulled on his environment suit with shaking hands, cycling through the airlock into Asheville's thin atmosphere. The cold bit through his thermal layers immediately. Through the storm's purple haze, he spotted the wreckage, a single-occupant escape pod, still smoking, embedded in the rocky ground. And beside it, struggling to stand, was a figure that made him stop breathing. She was tall, lithe, and her skin was the deep purple of a bruised twilight, marked with silver patterns that seemed to glow faintly in the stormlight. Her armor, black and fitted, designed for movement rather than bulk, was cracked across the torso, leaking some kind of luminescent fluid. But it was her eyes that froze him, amber and bright, burning with an intensity that promised violence even as her body swayed with exhaustion. "You," she said, her voice rough but melodic, carrying an accent he didn't recognize. "You're alone here?" Duran managed to nod, not trusting his voice. She took a step toward him and collapsed. Instinct overrode caution. Duran caught her. She was heavier than she looked, all muscle beneath that strange, smooth skin, and, half carried, half dragged her toward the habitat. The storm screamed around them as if protesting his decision to help Dot inside. With the airlock sealed and the howling reduced to a distant moan, Daron laid her on his medical cot. Up close, he could see the extent of her injuries, a deep gash across her shoulder, burns along her side, and something else as strange. Rhythmic pulse of blue light beneath the skin of her upper back. Her eyes opened, fixing on him with sudden intensity. Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "I shouldn't have stopped here, but I had no choice." She studied his face as if searching for something. "Will you turn me in? There's probably a bounty." "I don't even know who you are," Darren said, trying to keep his voice steady. A bitter smile touched her lips. "Zirana. I'm a tracker for the Cathara Guild. Or I was, until I refused to kill someone who didn't deserve it." She released his wrist, her amber eyes dimming with exhaustion. "Now, they've sent others to finish what I wouldn't." Darren should have been terrified. This woman, this alien assassin, had brought death to his doorstep. The smart thing would be to stabilize her and send her away at first light. But as he looked at her, bleeding and vulnerable on his medical cot, he saw something beneath the warrior's exterior, a terrible loneliness that matched his own. "One night," he heard himself say. "I'll help you for one night. After that, you're on your own." Zorena's expression shifted, surprise perhaps, or something like relief. "One night," she agreed softly. Outside, the storm raged on, and neither of them mentioned that they both knew one night might be all they had. Darren's hands trembled as he cleaned the gash across Zorena's shoulder. Her purple skin was warmer than he expected, almost feverish, and the silver patterns that decorated it seemed to pulse faintly with her heartbeat. She didn't flinch when he applied the antiseptic, though he saw her jaw tighten. "You're not a medic," she observed, her amber eyes tracking his every movement. "No, data archivist. But out here, you learn a lot of things you never planned to." He secured the bandage, then hesitated. "That light in your back, what is it?" Zorena's expression darkened. "That's why I'm dying," she explained as he scanned her with his medical equipment. The Cathara Guild had implanted a biosignature beacon in all their trackers' insurance against betrayal. When she'd refused her contract, they'd activated it remotely, Now it was slowly poisoning her system while broadcasting her location to every hunter within range. How long? Duran asked quietly. 3 days? Maybe 4. Less if they catch me first. She met his gaze. It needs to come out, but the placement is precise. One wrong move, and it severs my spinal cord. I can't perform surgery, Darren said, his voice rising slightly. I don't have the training or the equipment for something like that. Then I'll die here, Zarina said it so calmly, as if she'd already accepted it. Better than dying slowly while running. Darren stared at the scan results hovering in the air between them. The beacon was embedded deep, nestled against her spine like a parasite. It would be delicate work, nearly impossible with his outdated medical tools. But as he looked at Zarina at the resignation in her eyes, he found himself unable to accept that ending. I'll try, he said. But you need to walk me through it. Your anatomy isn't like mine. Something shifted in Zarina's expression, surprise again, mixed with something that might have been gratitude. Why would you risk this for me? You don't know me? Maybe that's exactly why? Darren pulled up detailed anatomical references on his display. No history. No expectations. Just someone who needs help. They work through the night. Darren prepared his tools while Zarina guided him through ketharophysiology, her voice growing softer as exhaustion crept in. She told him things she didn't need to about growing up in the guild creches, about her first kill at 14, about the decades spent tracking targets across the galaxy without ever having a place to call home. Have you ever been close to anyone? Darren asked as he sterilized the extraction tools. Close? Zarina laughed, but there was no humor in it. Trackers don't do close. We do contracts and kills and long silences between jobs. What about you? Why are you alone on this forgotten moon? Darren was quiet for a moment. I made mistakes. Trusted the wrong people. Lost everything that mattered. Out here, at least, the solitude is honest. We're quite a pair, then, Zarina said softly. 2 people running from different things, ending up in the same empty place. When the preparations were complete, Zarina lay face down on the cot, her back exposed. Duran could see the beacon clearly now, a small device pulsing with malevolent blue light beneath her skin. His hands felt inadequate for the task ahead. If this goes wrong, he started. It won't. Zarina reached back, her hand finding his. Her fingers were long and elegant, the purple skin soft despite the calluses. I trust you. Those 3 words carried a weight he didn't fully understand until later. But in that moment, with her hand in his, Darren felt something he hadn't felt in years, the burden of being trusted with something precious. He began the procedure with careful precision, following her whispered instructions. Each incision was a held breath. Each movement of the extraction tool was measured in heartbeats. When he finally lifted the beacon free, a small, cruel thing that had held her life hostage, Zarina gasped, her whole body shuddering with relief. It's out, Darren said, his voice shaking. You're free of it. He sealed the wound with surgical adhesive, his hands steadier now. As he worked, he was acutely aware of how close they were, how intimate this moment felt despite its clinical nature. When he finished, Zarina rolled over slowly, looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Thank you, she whispered. I've never had someone. No one's ever cared enough to... She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, her hand found his again, and this time neither of them let go. The storm outside had quieted, and in the gentle silence of the habitat, something unspoken passed between them, fragile and new. Like the first light of dawn, Darren knew he should pull away. Should maintain the distance that had kept him safe for 5 years. But as Zarina's thumb traced a small circle against his palm, he found he didn't want to. You should rest, he finally said, though he made no move to leave. Stay, Zarina said, her eyes already closing. Just for a while. So he did, sitting beside her cot, their hands still intertwined as she drifted into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months. And Duran, watching over this fierce, broken woman who'd fallen from the stars, realized that his carefully constructed solitude had just developed its first crack. 3 days. That's how long they had before Zirana's hunters would arrive. Tracking the last transmission from her beacon before Duran destroyed it, 3 days that should have been spent planning her escape, preparing defenses, or putting distance between them and the coming danger. Instead, they spent them learning each other. Zirana healed quickly. Kethera physiology was remarkably resilient, and by the second morning, she was moving through Darren's small habitat with a predator's grace, examining everything with curious intensity. She particularly fascinated by his collection, data crystals containing music from civilizations that had burned out centuries ago. "Play something," she said. Settling onto the floor beside his archive console, Duran selected one at random, a haunting melody from a race called the Velenir. All strange harmonics and resonances that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to something deeper. Zirana closed her eyes, her head tilting slightly as if the music was a physical thing she could track. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Sad, but beautiful." "They went extinct 400 years ago," Duran said, sitting beside her. "This is all that's left. Then you're a keeper of ghosts." Zirana opened her eyes, looking at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. There's honor in that. Remembering what's been lost. They talked for hours, sharing stories like trading precious things. Darren told her about his life before Ash felt the research team. The betrayal, the colleague who'd stolen his work and left him with nothing but blame. Zirana spoke of contracts that haunted her, of targets who'd begged and ones who'd accepted death with dignity, of the slow erosion of her soul that came from a life spent ending lives. "The contract I refused," she said quietly, "was for a child. A girl, 8 years old. Her only crime was being born to the wrong family. She looked at her hands as if seeing blood there. I couldn't do it. For the first time in 20 years, I just couldn't." Darren reached out, covering her hands with his. "That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." "I'm not human," Zirana said with a sad smile. "You know what I mean?" As the twin moons of Asheville rose that evening, Duran led her outside. The ion storm had cleared, leaving the sky impossibly clear and crowded with stars. The moons cast everything in silver and blue light, painting Zirana's purple skin in shades of twilight. "In my culture," she said, gazing up at the stars, "we believe the dead become starlight, that every light up there is someone who lived and loved and fought and finally found peace." She was quiet for a moment. "I used to find that comforting. Now I just see targets I've sent there ahead of their time. Maybe you can start seeing it differently," Darren suggested. "Maybe it's not too late to become something other than what you were made to be." Zirana turned to him, her amber eyes reflecting moonlight. "You really believe that? That people can change who they are?" "I'm trying to," Darren admitted. "Before you arrived, I'd convinced myself that isolation was the same as peace. That if I avoided connection, I couldn't be hurt again." He gestured at the vast emptiness around them. "But this isn't peace. It's just ... nothing. And now I'm reminded that nothing is just another word for lonely." They stood close enough that Duran could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could count the silver patterns that traced along her collarbone like constellations. When Zirana reached for his hand, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I've never felt this," she said softly, her thumb tracing across his knuckles. "This ... ease. With you, I don't have to be the Huntress, or the weapon, or the thing everyone fears. I can just be Zirana." "Who is she?" Duran asked. "When she's not hunting?" "I don't know yet." Zirana smiled, and it transformed her face, softening the hard edges into something almost fragile. "But I'd like to find out." They stayed outside for hours, talking and watching the stars wheel overhead. At some point, Zirana leaned her head against Darren's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him despite their differences. Her purple skin was warm against his neck, and when she sighed contentedly, he felt it resonate through his entire body. "They'll be here soon," she murmured. "My former partners, they won't give up easily. I know. You should let me go." "Before they arrive? You don't deserve to be caught in this." Adoran tightened his arm around her. "What if I don't want you to go?" Zirana pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes searching his face. Darren, I'm dangerous. Everything I touch ends in violence or death. You've built a life here, a safe, quiet life. I'll only destroy it. Maybe Darren said. Or maybe you're exactly what this life needed to mean something again. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the space between them charged with possibility. Then Zirana leaned forward slowly enough that he could have pulled away, and pressed her forehead to a gesture he somehow knew was significant in her culture. If we do this, she whispered, her breath warm against his lips. If we let this be real, there's no going back. You'll be marked by association, hunted like I am. Then we face it together. Drena's hand came up to cup his cheek, her touch gentle despite the strength he knew she possessed. When she kissed him, it was soft and tentative, as if she was learning a language she'd never been taught. Darren responded in kind, his hands finding her waist, feeling the alien architecture of her body beneath his fingers different. Yes, but no less perfect for that difference. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Zirana rested her forehead against his again. I think, she said quietly, I might be falling in love with you, and that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced. Good, Darren replied, smiling, because I'm already there, and I'd hate to be terrified alone. They returned to the habitat as the moon set, hands intertwined, knowing that tomorrow the hunters would arrive and everything would change. But tonight, they had stars and music and each other. And for two people who'd spent so long alone, that felt like enough. That felt like everything. They came with the dawn. Darren woke to Zirana's hand over his mouth, her amber eyes sharp with warning. He heard it then, the low hum of engines, multiple crafts circling the habitat like predators assessing prey. She moved to the viewport with liquid silence, her body tensing as she counted the ships. 3, she whispered. That means at least 6 hunters, maybe more. She glanced back at him, and he saw something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Fear, not for herself, but for him. Darren, you need to hide. There's still time to know. He stood, pulling on his jacket with hands that were steadier than he expected. We face this together. You said it yourself, are already marked by association. You don't understand what they'll do to you. Then explain it while we prepare. Zirana stared at him for a long moment, something like wonder crossing her face. Then she nodded sharply and began moving through the habitat with purpose, assessing angles and cover. The Cathera don't take prisoners. They'll try to kill me quickly and eliminate any witnesses, you included. Comforting, Duran muttered, pulling up the habitat's security systems. They were designed for weather and wildlife, not military assault. But he had a few surprises from his previous life in research stations. Can you buy me 2 minutes? I can buy you whatever you need. The habitat shuddered as something impacted the outer door. Then a voice, amplified and cold, echoed through the walls. Zirana of the Cathera. You are named Oathbreaker and Traitor. Surrender yourself and the human lives. Resist, and you both die screaming. Zirana's jaw tightened. She moved to the door, her body language shifting into something deadly and precise. Darren barely recognized her. This was the Huntress the galaxy feared, all coiled violence and lethal grace. I need a weapon, she said quietly. Darren pulled out a plasma cutter from his workshop. It's not military grade, but it'll do. She took it, testing its weight with a professional's eye. Then she looked at him, and for just a moment the hardness cracked. If this goes wrong, if I fall, ... run. Don't look back, please. Not a chance, Duran said, his heart hammering. We end this together, or not at all. The outer door exploded inward. 3 figures poured through the smoke, Cathera hunters in full combat armor. Their purple skin darker than Zirana's, marked with scars and kill marks. But it was the 4th figure that made Zirana freeze. A tall male with silver eyes and armor, adorned with trophies from 100 kills. Viktha, she breathed. Hello. Shadow sister, the male said, his voice carrying old familiarity and fresh contempt. Raised you. And this is how you repay that bond? By sheltering with a human and abandoning your oaths? My oaths didn't include murdering children, Zirana shot back, positioning herself between Duran and the hunters. The guild determines what constitutes a target, not you. Victorous eyes flicked to Duran with cold assessment. And this one? What is he? Your pet? Your weaknesses? He's none of your concern. Oh, but he is. Because he's the reason you're still here. The reason you didn't run? Victor smiled, cruel and knowing. You've developed feelings, Zirana. How wonderfully predictable. How very mortal of you. One of the other hunters moved, testing Zirana's defenses. She was faster, the plasma cutter blazed to life, forcing them back. But Duran could see the calculation in their eyes. 3 trained killers against 1 wounded warrior and an unarmed archivist. Last chance, Victor said. Come quietly. We'll make it quick. Painless even. For old time's sake. Zirana's grip tightened on her makeshift weapon. I'm done running. Done killing for people who send children to slaughter. If you want me, Victor, you'll have to go through someone who remembers what honor actually means. So be it. They attacked simultaneously, coordinated, lethal, professional. Zirana met them with everything she had, the plasma cutter carving through armor and flesh with brutal efficiency. She moved like violence personified, every motion economical and deadly. But she was outnumbered, and Duran could see her tiring, the wound in her back not fully healed. Then Duran did something foolish, brave. He activated the habitat's emergency systems. Alarms shrieked. Emergency bulkheads began slamming down, dividing the space into sections. Oxygen vents sealed. The lights shifted to emergency red. And Darren triggered the magnetic containment fields from his old research equipment, designed to hold volatile materials, now repurposed as makeshift barriers. It wasn't much, but it was chaos. And chaos was an equalizer. A hunter stumbled into one of the containment fields and screamed as electricity arced through their armor. Another took a direct hit from Zirana's plasma cutter as they tried to navigate the suddenly hostile environment. But Victor was advancing on Duran now. Seeing the tactical advantage in removing the human from the equation, you've chosen poorly, Archivist, Victor said. Drawing a blade that hummed with energy, Darren backed against his workstation, his mind racing. He grabbed the first thing his hand touched, data crystalland, hurled it. Victor batted it aside contemptuously, but the moment of distraction was enough for Zirana to intercept, her body crashing into his with bone-jarring force. They fought like siblings who knew every move the other would make, trading blows that would have killed lesser beings. Zirana was faster, but Victor was stronger, and his armor was intact. He drove her back toward the ruptured outer door, toward the thin atmosphere beyond. You were the best of us, Victor snarled, their weapons locked between them. And you threw it away for what? Love? Connection? Those are chains, Zirana. Chains that make you weak. Zirana gasped, her amber eyes blazing. They make me strong enough to choose. Something you never understood. She released her weapon and drove her elbow into his throat, then swept his legs out from under him. As Victor fell, she grabbed his blade and after a moment's hesitation that cost her dearly threw it across the room, disarming rather than killing. But that hesitation gave the third hunter an opening. Darren saw it happening as if in slow motion, the hunter raising their weapon, the barrel aligning with Zirana's back. The squeeze of the trigger, Darren threw himself forward, shoving Zirana aside. The shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around, and the pain was white-hot and absolute. He hit the ground hard, his vision graying at the edges. Duran. Zirana's scream was raw, primal. She turned on the remaining hunters with a fury that made them step back. In that moment, she was terrifying. Not a tracker, not a weapon, but something ancient and wrathful. She tore through them with her bare hands, snapping necks and crushing windpipes, till only Victor remained, struggling to his feet. This is what love does. He spat, blood on his lips. It makes you sloppy, emotional. It'll get you both killed. Maybe, Zirana said, kneeling beside Darren, her hands already working to stop his bleeding. But I'd rather die feeling something real than live forever as an empty blade. Victor looked at them both for a long moment, something unreadable in his silver eyes. Then, unexpectedly, He lowered his weapon. The guild will send others. This isn't over. I know, Zarena said quietly. But today it is. Victor left, dragging his wounded companions with him. The engines fired up. Soon the habitat was silent except for Darren's ragged breathing and Zarena's whispered reassurances. You idiot, she said, tears streaming down her purple face as she sealed his wound with steady hands. You beautiful, brave idiot. Why would you do that? Because Daron managed through gritted teeth? Someone once told me that maybe it's not too late to become something other than what we were made to be. He smiled weakly. I was made to be careful, to protect myself, to stay safe and alone. His hand found hers, bloody fingers intertwining. But I choose this. I choose you. Serena pressed her forehead to his, her tears falling warm against his skin. Then I choose you too. And whatever comes next, we face it together. Together. Duran agreed, and even through the pain, he felt something like peace settling over him. They'd survived. Against every odd, they'd survived. And in surviving, they'd proven that love wasn't weakness. It was the thing worth fighting for in the first place. The wound took 3 weeks to heal properly, and in that time, everything changed. Zarina stayed, though she kept watching the sky as if expecting more ships. Darren recovered under her careful attention, marveling at how someone trained to kill could be so gentle with healing. She learned to cook human food badly at first, then with surprising skill. He taught her about his music collection, and she'd spend hours listening to the voices of dead civilizations. Sometimes crying for reasons she couldn't explain. They didn't talk about the future at first. It felt too fragile, too precious to examine too closely. But on the 21st day, as they sat watching Asheville's moons rise, Daron finally asked the question that had been haunting him. What do you want, Zarena? Really want? She was quiet for a long time, her head resting on his shoulder. I've never been asked that before. The guild told me what I wanted. What I should desire? Success, honor, fear from my enemies. She turned to look at him, her amber eyes soft in the moonlight. But what I actually want? I want mornings that aren't about survival. I want to learn things that aren't about killing. I want ... What? I want to stay here. It's you, if you'll have me. Darren's heart did something complicated in his chest. You'd give up the stars? The hunt? Everything you've known? I'm not giving up anything, Zirana said firmly. I'm choosing something better. There's a difference. She took his hand, her purple fingers lacing with his. I've spent 20 years hunting across the galaxy, and the only place I've ever felt like I belonged is right here in this tiny habitat. With a man who collects music from ghosts and risks his life for strangers. I'm not that noble, Duran protested. I was running away when I came here. Maybe we both were. Running from different things toward the same empty place. She smiled. But we don't have to keep running. We can just ... be. Together, here. The guild will send more hunters eventually, Darren warned. Let them come. We'll be ready. Serena's expression turned thoughtful. Besides, I have skills. I can help you with your work. Protect the settlement. Maybe even train the colonists in self-defense if more ever arrive. I don't have to be a killer anymore. I can be a guardian instead. Protecting instead of destroying. You'd do that? Change everything about who you are. I'm not changing who I am, Zirena said gently. I'm becoming who I was supposed to be before the guild took that choice from me. She cupped his face with both hands, her touch warm and certain. You showed me that people can choose their own path. That it's never too late to become something new. I want to explore that. With you. If you're brave enough to let me? Darren laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuine joy. I took a plasma shot for you. I think we're past questions of bravery. Foolishness, then, Zirana teased, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Beautiful, wonderful foolishness. They kissed under the twin moons, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear. Just two people who'd found each other in the vast emptiness of space and decided that maybe, just maybe, the universe had gotten something right for once. Over the following months, they built a life that neither had imagined possible. Zarena helped Duran expand his archives, using her contacts to acquire data crystals from distant worlds. She was surprisingly good at negotiations. Her reputation preceded her, but now it worked in their favor. People paid well for the protection of a legendary Cathara tracker, even a retired one. Duran taught her about human culture, about art and poetry, and all the things she'd never had time to learn. She was an eager student, absorbing everything with the same intensity she'd once applied to hunting. And when nightmares woke her memories of contracts and kills that wouldn't fade, Darren was there, holding her until the shaking stopped. They expanded the habitat, adding a workshop for Zarena and a proper library for Darren's growing collection. They planted a garden in the biodome, an ambitious project on Asheville's barren surface. But Zarena approached it with determined optimism. She said she wanted to grow something instead of ending things. And watching her carefully tend fragile seedlings made Darren fall in love with her all over again. 6 months after that first stormy night, ship arrived, but it wasn't Huntress. It was a small trading vessel carrying a message crystal addressed to Zarena. She activated it with trembling hands, and Victor's face appeared in the holographic display. "Shadow sister," he said, his expression unreadable. "I've spoken to the Guild Council. Told them you died on Ashevale, defending your position against overwhelming odds. Your contract is fulfilled. Your death is recorded." He paused. "Live well, Zarena. You've earned it." The message ended, and Zarena stood frozen, tears streaming down her purple face. "You're free," Duran whispered, pulling her close. "Truly free." "We're free," Zarena corrected, wrapping her arms around him. "Both of us. Finally free to just ... live." That night they celebrated under the stars, dancing to music from a civilization dead for centuries. Laughing like children who'd never known war or loss or loneliness, Zarena wore a dress Duran had commissioned from a passing trader, simple and flowing, the deep blue bringing out the silver patterns in her skin. He'd never seen her look more beautiful. "What are you thinking?" she asked as they swayed together, the music soft and haunting around them. "That I spent 5 years on this moon trying to escape connection, trying to avoid pain," Duran said. "And then the universe threw the galaxy's fiercest Huntress, through an ion storm, and into my life. Are you complaining?" Zarena asked, her amber eyes twinkling with mischief. "Not even a little bit." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You were supposed to be passing through. One night we said, 'I'm terrible at following orders,'" Zarena murmured against his mouth. "Always have been. Lucky for me." They made love that night with the stars watching through the dome, taking their time, learning and relearning each other's bodies with reverent attention. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Zarena traced patterns on Duran's chest constellations, she said, mapping their own private galaxy. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Taking me in? Everything that came after?" "Every single day," Duran said, and when she tensed, he quickly added, "I regret that it took a near-death experience to find this, that we wasted so much of our lives being alone when we could have been searching for each other." "Sentimental," Zarena accused, but she was smiling. Darren corrected, "I love you, Zarena. Every fierce, deadly, surprisingly gentle part of you, and I love you," she replied, the words still slightly awkward on her tongue, as if she was learning a new language. "My archivist, my keeper of ghosts, my home." A sleep claimed them both, wrapped together in warmth and safety. Darren thought about how strange life was. He'd come to Ashevale to hide from the universe. And the universe had responded by sending him exactly what he needed. Someone just as lost, just as broken, just as ready to be found. The galaxy was vast and cold and indifferent, full of danger and darkness. But here, in this tiny habitat on a forgotten moon, 2 lonely souls had found something the stars themselves couldn't provide: belonging, purpose, and a love that asked nothing but offered everything. And that, Darren thought as he drifted off, Zarena's heartbeat steady beneath his ear, was more than enough. It was everything.